So while pulling together various videos about interiors and dashboards and which were the coolest and wonkiest, I had an interesting idea that popped into my mind based on some viewer feedback, and that is discerning which car had the largest accelerator pedal, at least in domestic car history. Now, of the big three, or we should say, I guess, big four, GM, Ford, Chrysler, and AMC, you think back to Ford in particular, they really didn't use overly large accelerator pedals for many years. Prior to the 1960s, Fords often had somewhat long, rather skinny accelerator pedals, nothing really of note. And then as time went on into the 1960s and 1970s, almost all Fords used the same floating accelerator pedal that sometimes was trimmed in stainless, sometimes it was not trimmed on the lower end models, but it really wasn't all that substantial in size or looks, though it did look quite tasteful. A similar story is true for Chrysler, where before the 1960s, most of their accelerator pedals were rather long and narrow. They did have kind of this bubble texture on them so that your foot didn't slip off of them, but again, rather unremarkable. And as the 70s progressed, many of the Chrysler accelerator pedals went to a style similar to what Ford had, this floating style that wasn't all that substantial in size and rather unremarkable. Some Chryslers did have relatively large accelerator pedals in the 1960s, as can be seen here in an Imperial. This is rather impressive in size, makes you think that there's something significant under hood. But I will say that this is not, at least in my mind, the largest accelerator pedal that was offered in domestic vehicles. On the AMC side of the house, there were again some long, rather narrow accelerator pedals in the early 1960s and before. But as time went on, they transitioned to both a brake and accelerator pedal that Chrysler continued using for many, many years in terms of its style. And the accelerator pedal was relatively small yet again. So if the largest accelerator pedal didn't come from Ford, Chrysler, or AMC, at least in my mind, you can guess where I think it came from, and that is General Motors. Now within the GM stable, every division had at least one accelerator pedal, and in the 1960s and 70s, they each had different accelerator pedals that they used. So we'll start in terms of order of unremarkable to more remarkable for the various GM divisions. Let's begin with Chevrolet, which used kind of this long, skinny accelerator pedal style for many, many years, including on the Caprices, Impalas, etc. It, again, was rather long, but relatively narrow and not all that substantial. Then let's go to Pontiac. In the 1960s, Pontiacs employed, again, kind of a long, skinny, trapezoidal shape accelerator pedal that was very tall, but it was not very wide. And by the 1970s, this accelerator had devolved into something somewhat smaller, just a regular floating pedal. Albeit in the early 1970s, Pontiac did have adjustable pedals. Yes, that's right, adjustable pedals for a few model years, perhaps the subject of an entirely different video. But other than their adjustability, there really, again, wasn't anything to remark at. That leaves us with three remaining GM divisions. And let's start with Cadillac. Cadillac had one style of accelerator pedal for many, many years, hinged at the bottom, and was relatively substantial in overall size, and often adorned with chrome trim, unless you got the base model Calais, in which case you got the cheaped out version that was just rubber. And in the early 70s, you also got cheaped out door panels that didn't have lights in the doors, which most Cadillacs did have, just had reflectors, kind of these two red reflectors in them. How rather unfortunate if you bought the Cadillac Calais. So we've excluded Cadillac from the nominating list. Now let's talk about Buick, who did have some rather nice, large, ornate accelerator pedals for many years, and were quite handsome as well. In the 1960s, you can see this particular style that's relatively wide as well as long. And then as the 70s came in, it also evolved. But Buick is not the division that I would say had the largest accelerator pedals of all. That leaves us with none other than Oldsmobile. In the 1970s, Olds went to, I would say, the second largest accelerator pedal style that is known. You can see it here, very large, also a large brake pedal, and trimmed out quite fancifully, if you will. This is an accelerator pedal that Olds used for many years into the 1980s on the large rear-wheel drive cars, but went away when the front-wheel drive cars came out in 1985. That then leaves Oldsmobiles from a previous year. And I think of all the accelerator pedals that were produced, the largest accelerator pedals put in domestic passenger vehicles are those that were placed into Oldsmobile vehicles in the full-size cars and the Tornado in the mid-1960s. Take a look at this accelerator pedal that's employed in the Tornado. This has to be the longest and the widest accelerator pedal in history. And it was used for a number of years, as I said, really until 1971 model year when the new full-size cars came out. But this accelerator pedal is quite substantial, makes you feel like you have command of something that is extremely powerful under hood, whether or not you had the economy 2-barrel V8, in some cases even the 425 economy low compression 2-barrel in the mid-60s, or you had the Starfire rocket engine, the high compression 425 4-barrel engine. And overall, I believe this to be the largest accelerator pedal ever placed in a domestic vehicle. Today, accelerator pedals are often just nondescript affairs, a piece of plastic that really nobody pays attention to. But back in the day, in the 1960s and even through the 1970s, like on these Oldsmobiles, and this accelerator pedal, the 1970s version that Olds came out with, lasted all the way until the 1985 model year on the last of the rear-wheel drive Delta 88s. Back then, accelerator pedals were at least something to be celebrated and have some design and flair about them, even to the point that in the early 70s Tornadoes, the plastic that was employed on these large Oldsmobile accelerator pedals was color-keyed to the interior. That is something that I have not really seen since then in any vehicle. Hope you enjoyed this fun little topic on largest accelerator pedals in domestic vehicles. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, take care. Thanks again for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, check out the video thumbnails at bottom left and bottom right for some suggestions for you. Thanks again for watching, and take care.